Hey guys, I'm going to be showing you some example solves for the Ayam method. If you don't know what that is, it's an intermediate blindfold solving method for the corners. I recommend checking out the forum. The link will be in the description below, and read that first to know what the heck's happening while I do the example solves. And I'm going to be giving you a couple example solves, not just one, to go through the different types of cases, parities, cycle breaks, all these things that you can run into. So get your cube, hold it in your orientation. I have white on top and green in front, and then do the following scramble. The scramble will be in the description and should pop up on screen right now as well. Okay, for this method, the buffer is UBR, which is B in the specs lettering scheme. I'm going to be saying the specs lettering scheme, but I should have the actual corners somewhere on the screen or somewhere in the description if you have a different lettering scheme. But I'm just going to be using specs because it's easier for me right now. So I look at B, that's my buffer, and I'm going to see where that goes. So that goes to M, and that goes to E, and then E goes to T, which goes to D, which goes to U, which goes to over here, which is S. So we have M, E, T, D, U, S. And so the first letter pair, M, E, I have to find a way to get M and E onto the face with the buffer on. So it's pretty intuitive. If you think about it, it might take a little bit of practice to try and recognize the setup moves, but a setup move should not be more than maximum 4 moves. Some cases are 5, but most of the time it's 3 or 4. So I can picture this in my head. First I'm going to bring this over, so I'm going to do an X prime and then move this down here with a D prime move. Then L, that's E there and M is there. Then I bring that here and bring that up. So that is M and that is E. And the first thing was ME, right? So I have to do the anti-clockwise A algorithm. Then reverse the setup moves. So down here, up here. And see, M is solved and E is solved. Then after ME we had TD, I believe. Let me just check, I kind of forgot. Yeah, TD. So I have to find a way to get T and D onto the front face. So D is already there and T is down here, back here. So it's I'm just going to do a Y prime and then insert that. So down, move that over, up. That puts it there, and it's TD, so it's just a regular A algorithm. Then reverse the setup move, so put that down, take it back. D is solved and T is solved. Then we have US, I believe. So U is here and S is down here. All right, and so what I'm going to do is, this is pretty, so just I'm going to do an X prime, D2, that's U, and then S is just a simple L move away, and that's a regular A algorithm. Then put the S back, so I'll do an L prime and then D2, and that solves the corners. So it's only 3 algorithms. Well, it was 6 corners, but each letter pair is one algorithm, one A algorithm, and you can solve all the corners like that. Let's move on to some other cases. So hold it in your orientation again and do the second scramble. All right, this is the second scramble. In this scramble, we have a twisted corner right over here. This has to turn anti-clockwise. And there's no other twisted corners, so I know at the end when the buffer goes back into its position it will be turned clockwise. So the buffer will be clockwise, and my buffer is UBR, B, and this piece is anti-clockwise. I'm going to remember that. And now I'm going to start actually learning where the corners go. So that's my buffer, that goes to F, which goes to S, which goes to L, which goes to E, which goes to T, which goes to J. And yeah, see, that's the buffer, so that will go there. And I know that's the blue side, so when the blue comes up, the white will be here, which is a clockwise turn. And so let's start executing. So first we have FS, so that's F and that's S. Okay, so there are 2 ways you can do this. Depends what you want to do. So you can do an X prime, then do a D, L, and that's F and that's S. Or you can do a Y prime and then bring the S over and then up. So it doesn't matter what you do, we'll just do this. That's F, that's S, so this is going to be a clockwise turn. Then down and bring back, and see F is solved and S is solved. Then we had LE, I think. Yeah, it was LE. Sorry, I'm not really memorizing right now. So LE, how can we do LE? It's simple. L is here, E is here, so bring it here. Now they're both on the same face. F2, up. Okay, and I know this is L, this is this is L, this is E, so I'm gonna do a algorithm, then bring that back, turn there, and see L is solved, E is solved. Then we had TJ, so T is here, J is here. This is simple. I'm gonna just do D prime, F prime, L prime, and see T comes here and J comes here, and this is a clockwise algorithm. Then reverse the setup, and now I just have to flip, and you can use any flipping algorithm you want. I'm just going to use one of them right now, and then that's corners solved. Now do the third scramble. Okay, after you've done the third scramble, we're gonna swap these two corners. So do any algorithm you want or no. That's gonna swap these two corners and maybe some edges. We don't really care about the edges right now. So I'm just gonna do a J algorithm. I'm gonna swap these two corners, and this is gonna force us to have an odd number of corners now. So I can show you guys what parity is gonna look like. And now we're gonna start memorizing. So we look at our buffer piece, and we're gonna start. So this goes to K, which goes to X, which goes to A, which goes to D, which goes to J, J goes to L, and then L goes to T. Oh, and that's my buffer now. Okay, so we had KX, right? Yeah, KX, and then AD, JL, T. See, that's odd number. We have 7 corners. And so at the end, so let's just do our first 3 letter pairs. So we have KX, so K and X, right? So the way to do this, I would do is D2, X is now here and K is here. Bring this up, and then F2. Then you can do your algorithm. So there's an algorithm like this as well, but I'm going to turn, and I know this is my buffer piece, obviously. Okay, and this is X. So I'm going to do a anti-clockwise. Okay, then reverse, so F2, L, D2, and see K is solved and X is solved. Then we had AD, so AD, this is pretty simple. I'm just going to do U prime, and then the anti-clockwise algorithm, and then U. Sorry, I meant the other way, so I did U first and then the U prime. Then I had LJ, so this is also simple. I'm just going to bring L over here. Once this is L, this is J, so now just up here. Okay, so I have, my thing is LJ. Sorry, the way I have to memorize is JL. That's J, that's L, so this is going to be anti-clockwise. And then bring it back, and then last I have T. So T, you can use any your old Pacman or whatever method that you normally use to just swap one corner. So I have my own little variation of old Pacman. I use this as my buffer instead of this. So I'm just going to bring this up. I'm going to do my swapping algorithm. So I just did a J algorithm, bring that back and put that back down, and that should solve it. So if you have parity, the last corner, you're just going to solve it any way you want, and it's the same for the same thing we use for even like expert methods such as BH and other type and commutators type things. You know, we still, if you have parity, we're just going to solve it normally usually. So it's the same way here. Okay, so this is the 4th scramble, and in this one we're going to have to break into a new cycle. Okay, and the only problem, not the only problem, one of the problems with this method is that you can't really have fixed cycle break areas. So usually in old Pacman, since this is my buffer, I will either break here, here, or here, depending on which pieces are solved and which ones aren't. And if you guys used like the pure old Pacman, where this is your buffer, I don't know which places are your most common cycle break areas, but for me it's either these. But in this method, you can't really have a set thing. I obviously try to go for the top layer because it's easier, it's less setup moves, but you have to be really imaginative and figure out which place is going to be the easiest to break into. So we're going to start off memorizing. So this goes to T, and see, T is my buffer. And if you think about it, I'm good to bring T to either one of these places. It's easiest to do a D prime and then F prime, and that's going to bring T over here, right? From here to here, then from here to here. That means it'll be easy for me to break into A. So I'm going to memorize TA. So I do TA, and then this goes to S, that goes to L, that goes to I, that goes to C. So TL, TA, SL, IC, and then that IC, and that's PE. Okay, so it's 4 letter pairs. We're going to have to do 4 algorithms. So first we're going to do TA. So as I pictured in my head, doing the setup move, I know this will be free. So I'll do that. And see, that's the buffer piece. I don't want to swap just these two. I'm going to do a 3 cycle like this. So it's going to be clockwise. And then bring that back. So T is solved, but A is not, because that was me breaking into a new cycle. Then I have SL. So S is here, L is here. So the way you can do it is I'm going to first bring S up. S is here, L is down here now. Now I'm just going to do D prime, F2, and that brings here. So it's SL. So that's going to be anti-clockwise. Then D2, D prime, and now L is solved and S is solved. And then what was it again? TA, SL, IC. So I and C, this is easy setup move, just bring it up. Okay, and then I, C. So this is going to be anti-clockwise. Then bring that back. So TL, TA, SL, IC, PX. No, it wasn't PX. What was it? I forgot, sorry. So it's PE, my bad. I'm really sorry. So for PE, what you can do is, alright, so it's in the same layer here, so I'm just going to do D2, L2, F. And that brings it over here. And that's E, and that's P. And so I have PE, so I know this is going to be A algorithm. That was a pretty bad A algorithm. And then bring this back, reverse, and that's it. That's going to be the solved. That's an example of you breaking into a new cycle. I'll show you another case right now. So do the next scramble. Okay, so in this scramble, we're going to have another cycle break, I believe. So let's just start off by memorizing. So that goes to U, E, so U, E, V, and Z. Okay, that's my buffer piece. Now, I have to break into a new cycle now. So I have to imagine where I can break into. So I can do an F2, bring the piece here, do a rotation and send it to A, right? Or I can do a D prime L2 and then do a cycle like this, and that will bring it to C. And I think I'll do that because that way I don't have to do a rotation, and it's very finger trick friendly. So I'm going to do VC. If you can imagine me doing a D prime, V will bring from here to here, then an L2. It'll come up here, and that's straight for an A algorithm. So I'm going to remember UE, VC, WD, SJ. Yeah, and see, I put the buffer piece in C, right? So it's gonna be, I'm gonna have the buffer back here again. So let's just start that. So I have UE. So this is how I do it. So I do an X prime. Then follow along carefully. So that's E and that's U. I'll put my fingers on them. So I do an L. Then I do an D prime, a D, sorry, and then I do an L again. And if you notice, E is here now, and U is here now, sorry, and E is here. And I have to do UE, so that's anti-clockwise. Then bring back, bring back, bring back. And see, E is solved, U is solved, and E is solved. So after UE, I had VC, and because V, I have to break into a new cycle, so I'm going to do D prime L2, and I can go straight into my cycle, which is anti-clockwise, and bring that back. Then I had WD, so I have to find a way to keep W here and bring D across. So this is a little annoying, but this is what I do. I just do R2, U, R2, U, and that brings it up. And I have to do an A algorithm. Then I do U prime R2, U prime R2, and that will set it up. Then I had SJ, so S is here and J is here. So this is a very easy thing. I'll just do an F prime L, that brings S down here, and then F2, and then do an A algorithm. Okay, then F2, and then put the J back. And that solves all this, and that's also a cycle break, another example of a cycle break and how you have to really imagine the setup moves. Okay, so once you've done the next scramble, do an X prime. So the top, your top color of orientation will be facing front now, and then swap these two corners. Do any algorithm you want, that's going to swap these two corners, but doesn't do anything else to the other corners. So I'm just going to go back to my trusty J algorithm, and that will swap these two corners and these two edges. And now this is going to be like a monster of a solve. I've made this solve so that it has a cycle break, it has parity, and it will have a twisty corner. So we're going to have parity because obviously we just did a swap, so we're going to have an odd number of corners. We're going to have a cycle break in it, and we also have a twisty corner, which is right here. This corner has to turn anti-clockwise. So that means at the end, my buffer is going to be clockwise. I know that. So let's start memorizing. So the first piece goes to V, that goes to E, that goes to G, which goes to F. So V, E, G, F, and that's my buffer piece. So now I have to break into a new cycle. It's going to be easiest for me to break into C because these two are going to be solved. I can break into C easily, and C goes to S. And that's this very simple L setup move. So CS, and then I have M. So M is going to be my odd one, right? So total I have VE, GF, CS, M. Okay, that's my last one. The M goes over here. So let's start executing that. So VE is going to be, if I do this, I'll do a D prime first, then I bring this here, then I can do a D prime, that brings V here, and like that. So now I have E here and V here, and it's VE, so I'm going to do a reverse A, then bring it back, so down here, and see that will solve V, and that will solve E. Now that's a little bit of a complicated setup move. I guess with a little practice you can do it, or honestly you can just mix it up. You can do the really complicated ones normally, but some of the easier ones you can do with the 3 cycles. So the next one after VE was GF, right? So that's very simple. G and F are both here, so I can just do a Y prime, bring this up, and I'm ready to go with my algorithm, GF, which is going to be anti-clockwise, rather than doing one for G and one for F. So I'll just do the algorithm, then bring that back. Now I have to do CS, so C is here, S is back here, bring that up, CS, that's going to be A algorithm, bring that back, and then last but not least M. So you do M the way you would normally do M in your blindfold solves. And then I know these two are swapped. This was anti-clockwise, so this must be clockwise. All right, and you can flip them using any way you know. And obviously some edges are messed up because we did the parity thingy, all that, but right now we're just focusing on corners. So as you can see, all the corners are going to be solved. Alright, so I'm going to show you how I would kind of solve it actually. So do that same scramble again, the one we just did, and again swap those two corners. So we have parity, and we're going to have a twisty corner over here. So the way I would solve it, I use a bit of floating buffers and a bit of freestyle. So we're going to have the same scramble. I kind of forgot it, but okay. Okay, I remember now. Yeah, VE, GF, and then we have to break into a new cycle. So we did CS and then M. I remember that. So once that thing is going to be solved, I'm actually going to break into I'm going to change my buffer. So I know I did C, right? I did CS. So I'm just going to change I'm just going to change C into my new buffer. And I'm going to swap these two corners because those are the regular corners that I keep swapping. If you use Alt Pacman, I mean edges, sorry. If you use Alt Pacman, you're probably going to be swapping these two edges. So let's just start off by doing VE. So I'll bring V here and then there. That's E, that's V. So I have VE. I know that's. Oops. Whoa, that was a really bad execution. So V and E are solved now. For that one, I just basically I brought V to E to U, and then I just know I'm used to the EU one. It's just down here, down, and that's what I use for EU. I think I had one of the previous solves had EU in it, so I just brought that down here to make it easy. Then we had FJ. Sorry, we had GF. I'm so sorry. Then bring that up. Then do that, and then now I know this is solved. Now I'm gonna do CS. But instead of doing CS, I'm just going to change this into my buffer because I know I have parity anyways. So I know this is S. So instead of doing C, and then this obviously would come here and then I would break into a new cycle, all that thing, if you know what cycle breaks is, I can just do S because S is a very easy setup move. And then I'll do V algorithm because I know that will be down here, right? Then I would do V algorithm to swap those two corners and those two edges. And that would be solved, but obviously I know I have a twisty corner, so instead of this corner being flipped, which I know it wouldn't have been because when I landed there, I knew I landed on the white, so I know it's going to be there. If I landed on something different, then it's going to be too complicated, and I'm going to have to remember 3 twisty corners or something. But since I knew I was landing straight on white, I decided to go for a floating buffer. If I didn't have a twisty corner, I would immediately go for a floating buffer. But since I have a twisty corner and I solved on white, it's easier for me to go into twisty corner. That might seem very confusing, but if you listen to it again, it'll probably make sense. So I'm just going to do CS. So that's going to come here and that's going to be twisted. And again, I know that's anti-clockwise. So my new buffer piece is going to be clockwise. So I do L, V algorithm, and then bring that back. And again, I know this is going to be flipped clockwise, so I'm just gonna bring those both up, and then you can use whatever flipping algorithm you know or you want, and that's how I would solve it. Okay, so I was just editing the video and I realized I didn't explain my freestyle technique a little bit very well and apparently I forgot English as well. So I'm gonna hopefully just make a quick segment and that might explain a bit more of what I was trying to actually say. So hopefully after you watch this little part and then go back and listen to that thing again, it'll make a bit more sense. Okay, so I've done that same scramble and I swapped those two corners as I said, but I've also made a small modification. I flipped these two corners. So I flipped this anti-clockwise and this one clockwise to make this one solved. So in this case, we don't have a twisty corner. We're going to have an odd number of edges, odd number of corners. So the first couple letters are still the same. So I have VE, GF, and then I have those two have to swap. Okay, so I could do EF, CSC, right? Or as I'll show you, if I use a floating buffer, I know that's going to be solved, and now I'm going to have parity. Because if you have two corners that have to be swapped, that's 3 moves in Alt Pacman technique. So at the end, these two edges will be flipped. So it's the same thing as having parity. So instead of doing 3 algorithms, I can just bring that up and do 1 algorithm, and I'll produce that same result that I want. So I'll just do VF quickly. Okay. So I do VE, then I do. Then I do GF, then that's solved, and so instead of bringing it here, then this back again, first doing a cycle break, I can just do L prime, I can just do L, and then I can do my V algorithm, and then reverse that again, and this way I'll have my edges swapped if I done them, depending on if you do edges first or edges afterwards, but that would solve all the corners. Okay, so this is that same scramble yet again, and again after I did the scramble I swapped these two corners with one more modification. This one had to be turned anti-clockwise originally, but I turned it clockwise and I turned this one clockwise, so the buffer piece, And so now this has to still turn clockwise once more to be fully solved. So now I'm going to show you what I meant by in the cases I would play it safe. In that example, I did a floating buffer, but in this one, I will not. I will actually prefer to break into a new cycle, and you'll see what I mean right now. So again, I have V, E, G, F. Now look here, F, I stop at the buffer piece, but I don't stop at the white sticker. And so I know the buffer piece is going to be twisted. And so now to be safe, instead of making this my buffer piece, which is going to be S, and I bring this up and then I swap these two, that's not going to be solved as well. I can see that's not white. So it's going to be way too confusing to try and memorize and understand that these three pieces have to swap. I could do that, but I'm still not super comfortable with that. So I'm just going to break into a new cycle. So as we did before, so after I do the VEGF, then I'm going to do C, S, and then I'll do M. And that'll pull my buffer piece back, and this time the buffer piece will be anti-clockwise since this is clockwise. And then I can just do the algorithm that I want. And one second. So I did VE, then GF. Put that back. You can have a move cancellation over there. And then see, I know this was not going to be, as I saw, the blue was here, so I know this is here, but it's going to be flipped. So instead of doing this and using my floater buffing technique, I'm just going to play it safe and just play it cool. And just do that, and then this goes to M. And then put that M back, and I know those two have to flip, right? So once those two have to flip, I'll just use whatever flipping algorithm I want to fix those two corners. And yeah, so that's what I meant by playing it safe. Since I knew that the buffer piece was going to be fixed, since I knew the buffer piece was not going to be fixed, and I don't want to risk having another twisty corner, because then the 3 cycles for corners orientation, I don't like them. Although I don't know if they're more efficient or not. I just personally don't like them, so I tend to try and stay away from them as much as possible. So I would much prefer having 2. I would rather much prefer breaking to a new cycle and going back to the buffer piece again, having that a bit of extra move to make it easier for me, because I do edges first, then corners, so I don't want to remember too much information for corners after I memorize edges and then solve edges and then do the corners. So for me that works. If you solve corners first, it might work for you because you are putting it more short-term memory. I don't know, but for my style, since this is my freestyle, this is what works for me. You're gonna have to experiment and figure out what works for you. Okay, so I'm gonna show you just one last scramble, and in this scramble you're really gonna see how using the Ayam method and a little bit of freestyle and all this can really make your corners pretty fast, at least for intermediates. So this scramble already has 2 solved corners, so we got lucky. So I know I'm gonna have at least 5 or 6 things to memorize. 3 or 4 things to memorize. Now, if I was gonna memorize this normally, first I know there's no twisty corners, so I'm just gonna remember. I'd remember W, V, I. Oh, that's a cycle. So W, V, I. Now, what would be easy to break into? It would be easy to break into S. Yeah. It'd be easy to break into S because look, if I bring I up here, if I do an L prime, S would move down here, and then just doing an F2 would bring it up. So if I'll just show you right now. If I do an L prime, S comes down here, and then I can do an F2 and I can do my algorithm straight away. So I have WV I S, and then S goes to R, and the R goes back to S, right? And then that should be solved since we have things. So we have 6 letters, so I would do 3 algorithms. Now that's how somebody who might not use a little bit of freestyle might do it, but since you notice these 2 are already oriented. They're already oriented on the blue pane, on the blue plane, the face, right? So I can use a PLL, and this is a very easy setup move. I can just bring it up by there, and I can do some form of a PLL to swap these 2 corners like that, knowing that these 2 are already oriented. So what I can do is I can memorize WV, So I did it the wrong way around. WV, right? WVI, and that would solve the buffer, right? And instead of breaking to a new cycle WVIS as I planned, if I just do WV, I do I normally, as I would do in my old regular beginner method, that would swap these two corners. Then I can just do an L, and I can swap those two corners and these two edges using an R algorithm, and that would solve the entire case. So instead of doing three letter pairs and for each one doing the setup moves and solving them and all that, I can just do this in 1, 2, 3 algorithm. Now I know it's the same number of algorithms, but I'm being a lot more efficient, and rather than thinking like, see, for that one, I had to do the I, and I had to think about S being the next buffer, the next cycle break I can go into, since C is already solved. If C wasn't solved, I would just do IC, but since I see C is solved, I had to break into S. So you can get away with that by doing those things, and VW is pretty easy. I just do that, and then it's an anti-A algorithm. Then bring that down. Then I, as you bring it up here, I'm just gonna do a J algorithm to swap those. Then do L prime, then do R prime, and reverse. And just like that, you've solved all the corners, and that can be pretty fast. That can be done in, well, right now I was looking and I wasn't memorized, but if you use a little bit of what Noah calls think ahead, you can do that within, that was a pretty easy case, but that can be done within 10, 15 seconds, I'm assuming. And that can be, that's pretty fast, at least for the intermediate method. So the 3 cycle, the Ayam method, is pretty good while using a bit of freestyle. So you really have to be able to imagine how the pieces are going to be moving and what's going to work for you, what's not. Don't always try to make it work for you. If it doesn't pop up immediately, then don't force it. But doing a lot of sighted solves and really trying to concentrate and trying to find those patterns is really what's going to help your corners get better and better. And for freestyle at least. And that's what's going to really improve your speed, rather than just getting muscle memorying the setup moves or just doing algorithms on everything. If you're able to really picture the cube and imagine how pieces are going to move, you're going to fail a couple times, but after a while you'll start getting some really good successful solves. And it's always nice to be able to do a little bit of freestyle, and it be successful. Just if you feel smart. So I highly recommend you explore a bit, try and link it with a bit of freestyle, throw in a bit of old Pacman here and there if it's a bit too complicated. I can give you an example. The setup moves for R and M, that's a 5 move setup. I should have it in the list somewhere, but I never use that setup for R and M. Although I tried to make it as finger trick friendly as possible, it has a couple rotations, it has a lot of moves, and it might be a little difficult to reverse, at least for me. If you want to put in the time to learn that, you can. But so if I just had like something RM or MR, I would just probably use the old Pacman technique right now, because even though it's more moves, I might be a little bit more faster with it. But obviously, if I do learn that thing, I'm gonna solve 2 with less moves, and that could become faster. But I'm lazy. But experiment, find what suits you. That's the main key to be able to do blindfold well. Even if you go into commutators, the BH method, which I currently am at the moment, but I'm still learning. I still have a lot to do. I've so far made all the algorithms for the L corner. You still have to be able to think on your feet, and try and come up with the algorithms yourself. So even here, I would highly recommend you try and come up with the setup moves yourself, and really look for patterns for quick, easy fixes, like the one we just had here, where it was a SR. It's on the same face, so I can easily do that, and I can do an R algorithm and solve that. If I had 2 pieces here solved, let's say I had this case, I'll set it up right now. Why not? Right? If I know I had a JK or a KJ, right? Then instead of putting one here and all that, I know it's on here. And I know I have to swap these 2 edges, which are my edges. If you're using old Pacman, you could just do this and then do an R algorithm. But if I know it's these 2, I can just do an F2 up here, and I haven't disturbed this block. And I can do my R algorithm, right? And then reverse that setup. And in those cases, I don't have to do anything to my buffer, but it's like I've done cycles, because it's having a 2 swap would be 3 moves. But in this case, I've done those 2 swaps in 1 move. So that's where it can become really, really efficient. Anyways, I think I've rambled on enough. Please check out the forum link if you're interested in learning more and a couple more ideas. I'd love to hear your ideas, so if you want, you can comment down below. But hopefully this is going to be helpful to those of you that are interested in advancing a bit more forward with the Ayam method, and hopefully it's nice.